Hello, everyone. Hello. Hello, welcome to the first 30 minutes participant presentation of this group. I'm Giulia Bellinetti, as many of you know, and I'm part of the Future Materials team at the LIVinK Academy. So thank you very much for the patience of some externals that are here. I would just give the word directly to Punch because we're very much looking forward to his presentation today. Punch.
Hi. Okay. I'm Punxh Peerasin Hutaphaet. I'm from Thailand. The picture on the background is like myself during, I think, 20 years. From like a kid to become like a me right now. So I think like according to the first presentation, I asked like, oh, what I would love to be in here. And then like I would think to describe in this first presentation. So back to that summertime that I told you before, like I saw many plastic on the grass. And I think like as a designer, what can I do with that? Because like we invented plastic to containing water, but then like why we need to print everything on top? Why we have to put the aesthetic on them? Can I decide something to turn that graphic become more meaningful, or they can degrading by itself? And I got this one like, yeah, it's a fungi, it's a mushroom, because like the mushroom basically they're not just creating something, but they destroy at the same time. So basically they're balancing between things together and with a meaningful life. And then now I got the project come out last year, like called GROWinK. Like I manifesting about how can we mimicking the color from CMYK like in the printer, and can develop them with my fungi color. And as I say, it's not only create color, but they can destroying something. So inside the color, they have the bacteria that sleeping, and they can degrading the plastic and fabric. When you end of life, you can use for like the museum, the gallery, only for 1 day or 7 days. But then you have the purpose at the end. That's the past project that I came here so far. But what I've been doing, like, okay, I've been doing like incubator program to make this thing become the startup, which I think like it's nice in the same way that people see my potential of the ink that could be something can scaling up and can replacing the real petroleum, but I think I'm not ready enough to go in that field. So I step back and like come to here to see like what my research or my ink can do. As I mentioned before, the color is four color normal, like CMYK, the black, the yellow, the blue, and the red. Only these four color can make alternative of Pantone. But now only fungi may be not enough, but I would love to exploring more what it could be in the future. So I step back to see like this like a diagram evolution of the tree of the human. Normally it's like it's not in horizontal but in vertical. They try to show like the back from the root. We come from like a protozoa, the microorganism, like a smaller thing, and then we growing up become our human right now. But sometimes we just forgot about that and we think like we are the top of the tree. We are the one that like a final evolution that we can do anything from the back part, which I don't think is the right way to think about that. And many people create many vocabulary to like, okay, we start from like eco design that we think about nature but more green, and then we develop more like circular design. We develop to sustainable design, but then that thing is related to human, because we just think about like human at the top of everything. We have to think about capitalist and how everything can serve human and have some positive feedback to the nature. But what if we rethinking that again and we think it like we are the same species, we sharing our one planet together? What if like regenerative is like we think the nature at the first place? And things like human like driven environmental change disrupt evolve the visual system, because like as I said before, now we in the Anthropocene that human have the right to do many things that we forgot that we harm a lot of like nature. So I go back to like to see and like interesting in the topic about like Anthropocene that relate to correlation, because like, for example, on this one, they have many insect and animal that they lose their pigment, they lose their camouflage because of the building, because of the industrial pollution. For example, number 3, like a butterfly in Amazon, you can see the brown one on the top that used to be the blue one, but now they lost the pigment by itself. Or even like number 2, the moth, like back to UK industrial pollution, because the lichens, like a tree, have like a pattern that they can mimic and merge them together, but because of pollution, now they lost them. So I try to decode the evolution at the system architecture to see like how the factor can affect each one and what can we interrupt or learn something from that. And I realized like if the color is biological, then printing doesn't need to be reproduced. It can grow it, we can grow them. So that's why I have the new thing like graphic, rather could be like communication, can be, they become like cultivation instead. So this system, I try to mimic them become like a pigment, pattern, and substrate environment. It's quite like a lecture thing, but I would love to go walk through like what my research been so far in 3 months. The first one is about pattern. Even like we thought like nature is organic or like it's not geometric, but if we decoding the mathematics, we can see the pattern of how they grow, how the bush expanding, how they become like a tree. So I use like the scanning to see like how the structure of the tree work and see how the inside organic, because like one tree is a big ecosystem that many things happen around, and I try to see the nature and the texture. How can I learn from that and adjusting to my graphic design? I also collecting many like texture that not only like make from nature, but the pattern that make for by human, or the thing that human made, but nature requirements, to see how the pattern could go, to see how the developing of the pattern could be a new texture or camouflage. And that's just like the archive of like a visual mismatch, like I told you before, like a nature, what the nature make, what the human make, how the nature and human they come together, and how the nature they merge them together. I try to set like, I would love to decoding them and become like archive program that we can insert in the texture and see the pattern and generate them and use my ink to printing that, which is quite like still developing now. I just don't have, like you can see the blank page in the that side, which is just 2 months, so I still haven't like filled everything at the same time. But going back to today, so like I would love to introduce you like my living lab. I would love to step more than fungi, but can we do color from anything else that relate to microbiology? Why microbiology? Because like if we see the pigment inside the animal, they have carotenoid, melanin, which is like we can find on the microbiology too. And referring back to like the thing that I showed the first one, the biggest tree, everything come from like the smaller things. That's why we love to exploring the power of the small thing. How can they reclaiming everything back? We're gonna go start with like the algae, which like you can see the screen at the same time and see the screen at the same time. This one is algae. So it's called spirulina. What the algae did? Algae normally like there's an organism that they photosynthesis or they living in the sea or the water. They try to cleansing the water with like the good oxygen, so they can like organism underneath the sea. They can like living nicer. This is like what I've been working so far with like my seaweed. So as you can see, like this one is called spirulina. The spirulina is a green one, but when you left them underneath the sun for a while, they will separate between two pigments, which is green and blue. I will use this one, and also like the red one, which is this one. The red one is called like anthocyanin, so like it's also like a red pigment that would be nice also. And we're gonna move to the next one, which is fungi, because like I didn't talk much about like how the fungi they work last time. So we would love to show you like basically people thought like, okay, mushroom, you make color from mushroom, you definitely like get the color from the mushroom. But no, the mushroom is like the ending of the product of the fruiting body, which is like a fruit. But they have many stages that they can giving you the color. For color, like the first one is like a monocus. So the red one, I fermented the rice, become the red one. The second one is like the red, the yellow one here is called cordyceps. If you know like the movie called like Last of Us, the one that can colonizing the insect and human, that's the same one, but this one is different species, but it can providing you the yellow color. For the blue one, it's Colochiboria, so like it's a green elf cap. The reason why I found this one because like I went to foraging in the forest and I saw the wood they got colonized by the blue. So I think like wow, this is quite nice because it's not that much blue pigment that you can find in nature, but now I found it when I get foraging. And for the last one is a black one. It's like a shaggy ink cap, which like they have a fascinating processing because when they're dying, they're releasing the melanin by itself. So it's like a squid that they release the ink by itself. This is a fungi that I would love to work with. The third one, I'm not sure you know about this one or not, but it's a lichens. Lichen is like, what is lichens? Lichen is like an organism that they work between fungi and algae. So fungus, they're forming themselves in the non-living organism. For example, the rock, even the plastic or the metal. The fungus gonna colonize themselves, become like organ, and then algae will merge them together and photosynthesize to make them more living, which they have many fascinating of like process, which I can get many color of that also. And the last one that I work with bacteria is like a new thing for me, like because bacteria is like the fastest thing that we can grow and we can get the color from that, which from Future Material Fellowship. So we have the partner with the Shield Lab. So I have to go back and forth to the lab to grow them every week. And sometimes they give me the color, sometimes they didn't give me, and sometimes just nothing happened. Or just sometimes they're just giving me color on the cap, which like I cannot use it because I have to learn more like how this organism work because it's a new thing for me. But successfully, I got three color from this one. Successfully, I got the pigment of them. So like normally I can get the pigment from three kind of on the petri dish, like these circle things. But my aim goal, I would love to make them more in liquid so we can use them more scaling up and can do the application more, which I try quite a lot, but it's might not successful yet, but it's just starting. So let's see how it could be. So go inside of the bacteria. So this one is called luteus. It's like a gram positive you can find in the soil and water and the air. The second one is a purple one. Also you can find in the soil and fresh water. And the last one that sometimes when you're showering, you might see some pink thing on the tiles, which is also the bacteria of the same one because like they love the moisture and they love the air things. And this one become like living in archive because I would love to expanding more of the palette of the color. I'm still don't know what I would love to be, but I would love to exploring more organism that can make me a color. So I hope one day I can use them or make them have more money of it, which I'm not sure yet. And the reason why is only four color because like um how to say it, inkjet printer is like a technology that they overlay them like a small precisely drop on demand of the ink, so we don't use that much color to make them. But right now I try to expanding more, not only printer but try to get more new stuff, which I will show you on this machine. This machine called like hand drawing, no, hand draw machine, which you can draw something on it, which I would love to show you how it works. Oh, got a pen. Yeah, it's a Yeah, so like this one I play a new thing from last week that people might join my workshop about like natural alchemist, like expanding from like because I got at first I would love to do this workshop about microbiologists too, but then like they have limitation about safetiness. So I think about like even normal people and kids how they can play with. So I use the color from natural pigment. I'm not sure they can attach the thing on the paper or not. But this ink, I create like a pH shifted of the pigment. So like you can see the color on the pen is red, but when they touch the paper, they become purple, and when they dry, they become blue. Because inside there they have the chemical called anthocyanin, which like a pH shifted base, and then like when they oxidize to the air, that's why the red become blue, which is quite fascinating. The new way of printing and the new way of like making things. Oh, oh, how to go back there. And this is like my diagram that I made from last year, and I would love to stick for it because like normally like the traditional ink they come from petroleum resource, and when you printed them they become waste, and it's like a linear diagram. But I would love to, what if it is possible that I can make my own printing system that more regenerative? We not talk about sustainable, we talk about like how we make the graphic, but we think about the nature first, and we see how our communication we can go back to them. So this is the reason why I do this project. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
So times for questions. The first one is, what is the hand drawing machine drawing on the paper?
You? Yeah, I because like we can because like what I'm gonna say, we can do anything with this one, many things, and we can because we have to think about the pigment and the substrate, so we can play between both of them, and yeah, we can grow something on it, especially mold. So I would love to try to print mold and try to print something living, because like as you can see, like this is algae, they're living, they still have a life. If you see from microorganism like microscope, you can still see they're living in here. And yes, when I print on that, they're still living, of course. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There are some questions already. Otherwise, I will go. Punch, I have a question about how you're working between different disciplines, because it seems you have like a quite interesting and ambiguous relation with business and capitalism. You mentioned it like a few times. But at the same time, you're also working across the sciences, biology, microbiology, arts, graphic design, graphic communication. So it seems really like you're sort of embedding this hybridity of the world you are looking at and getting inspiration from. So I wonder, like, first of all, like, how you find inspiration to work with the different species and the different living beings you're working on? Like, does it come from literature that you read, conversation that you have with scientists or with designers or with artists? You are like going out for a walk and observing what you have across you. And connected to this, I would be curious to know if you think that your work as a material designer, material researcher, or artist that is experimenting with materials, and then tell me how you see yourself across all these different profiles and figures, but how it can also help us to interpret better the changes of colors in the landscape that you have been mentioning before, right? Like in relation to pollution, like certain species are losing their colors or they are changing their colors. So how material research can help us to develop, to interpret, to make legible certain changes that are so slow that we can't perceive them, or we perceive them when they become like of a scale that is incommensurable. And yeah, and then if you want like to expand a little bit on your relation with capitalism and how you're seeing yourself and your practice, sort of like in this position, right, in which you collaborate with like sort of scientific hubs, scientific centers that are still like very much rooted in the capitalist system and in dialogue with a specific economic paradigm, but at the same time you're thinking about regeneration. So how you see these two compatible. So these are three different questions. You can pick the one you wish, and then the other ones we will unpack them in front of a coffee, maybe.
Okay, thank you for the question. It's a good question. Sometimes I lost between the question, but I will try to answer all three. First of all, like I still don't know what I want to do next in my life, but you asked a question like why being so far have many disciplines and interesting about capitalists. I would say like back to the past. After graduate high school, I would love to be a doctor. I told you before. I didn't get in. I go pharmacist. I got rejected from interview. Then I studied psychology for 1 year. Then I moved to product design for 4 years. After graduate product design, I went to politics in like a politic campaign for visualizing for the party, young party in Thailand for 2 years, and then moved to Melbourne to collecting money and go to study in UK. And the turning point is like when I study in product design, we have the course named sustainable design that they reorganize my brain about like how we thinking nature as a part of us, but we're not above anything. And more emphasize on in UK that I know more about regenerative design, that they teach me how to go back to nature. Every solution can find from nature. The aspirin that you take for headache, they come from the tree. We just forgot that everything that we make from now, we just know from the past. People figured out already. We just thought like we invented new thing, but if we comparing things, that it might be some wisdom from the far away country. They know this thing already, but they didn't call them innovation. They call them wisdom. But all the wisdom they relate to nature, but all the scientific things sometimes they put more chemical. So I try to balancing them again to see how the wisdom of the nature they can merge with integrating with science and moving forward to something like a pigment things. And I would the reason why I talk about capital is like when I went to the startup thing, I see many people have ambition that what they want to do, what they change the world, but did they really want to do that? Or some people would love to, but some people just do that because they want money. To be fair, that's what I thought. That is my opinion only. And I think like maybe I don't need to go in that point. Like I have a chat with Dorica about this one, about her research about the acrylic and the pigment thing. Like if she finally got the binding that replacing fully plastic, what she wanna do? Do she wanna do the startup or not? She said no. She said wanna have a statement and send to the company to ask them about like this is a solution that you can do. You can replacing that. It's quite like they might have more one way to be successful like an entrepreneur. Maybe artists could have more money by itself or designer with the creativity way more than just go for like everything have to, okay, money is a big thing. I also love money. No one don't like it. But what if the money that we got from it, they can have something back, not only us, but for nature also. Yeah, I don't know if I answer everything or not, but I try my best. Yeah, maybe we can like yeah. Thank you.
Maybe there are other questions? Yes.
Yeah, talking about capitalism, I Thank you for this beautiful lecture. I think it's also very poetical. You bring something in that's really vivid. When I think about printers, it's printing words, it's printing money, it's printing something that is like, it's there and it is printed, like when you see the whole history of printing. But do you see printing now as something new, as something vivid, as something giving more than describing? I mean, what does printing mean for you now when you work with vivid things or with living things that are also making living things?
I think like for me, like printing is like the way of communication that maybe we preserving something or we would love to describe something at the same time. And yeah, what I'm thinking about printing now, I think like if we talk about like mm, sustainable thing that people do a lot of many stuff, but because like when I try to do startup, I try to contact the printing company to like, can they help me to develop this one? You see the potential of that, but it's quite like a polite to say no because the most money that they can make is about ink, not printer. Because like the ink make the business running again and again. If people can make their own ink, how they gonna survive? And now they have me like we think again, yeah, this is about capitalism again, that we have to survive on this business. If the business interrupt the big company, they will doing nothing. So personally, as a small person, as a small tiny one, that what can I do with this little thing? That's why I came here, because the printing can be described from many perspectives. And I think this is the right place that can learn more, because we have a lot of like amazing artists that they open my mind more. I never worked in artists before. I don't know even what is institution or curator or what is artist work. I'm quite lost at first because me and Sophie we talk like we don't know what is this mean for us, because we just step into and we just have to run everything. And with the first presentation, which is okay, we quite fun. But I would say like when I try to adapt more, I learn more things from people. I learn more things from artists. So like apart from this thing, that presentation that you asked me like what the printing mean, I would say like printing would be more collaboration with not only with organism but with some people, company, gallery or museum. We not like manage or control them, but we work with them, align with them at the same time, and everyone have their own expertise. And I think like one expertise they can spreading around like a bush, they become like a big tree and growing them again with new way of printing. So I cannot answer you right now what is printing for me, but we will see at the end of this year or maybe next or maybe we don't know. But yeah.
I have a question. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. And I'm curious, does it possible? I mean, your project relate to specific location? For example, in UK, Netherlands, or Thailand, you may get different material. How do you think about the area? And also, I'm curious, is it possible in the future you maybe this can be kind of like site-specific project relate to some certain location?
I think about that one. I write a proposal this one and send to the lab. They said no to me. The reason why, because like I would love to do site specific. I would love to, but like we don't know what inside that soil. I went to the cave with friend here. I took some sample there. I tried to sneak in to bring my sample inside the lab. They said no, because like in the lab they it's a sharing lab, that they have some organism that can harming each other, and in the soil they have a lot of unknown thing. I can create new COVID-19, like, so they have to be like more be careful about that one. But we have to be like more. But I would love to see if they have like a small lab that I can work with, that they know they expertise about soil extraction, because normally lab they have like, I'm not sure, maybe 3 or 4 level. 1 and 0 is like kitchen lab that we have it right here. Level 1 is like they can grow something that not harm to the human. Level 2 is like something that can infect the human. Level 3 is like we we don't want to work with them that much. Level 4 is like Ebola thing that you have to put everything in the things. So I need more like a lab level that, because we don't know what inside there, but they have potential and would love to, because at first I would love to make a Pantone for Yemenite, but they just flip me down the table like, oh, you cannot do that. So okay, try new things. Yeah, that's how I work with scientists. Yeah.
Now I'm thinking maybe this was also answering to my question, but this printer that you showed with the cartridge, so is there like a specimen existing like that?
Or is that working, right?
Yeah.
It's working only 2 color right now,
Okay.
because like that's a problem for me too, because like sometimes when you got printer, you have a cartridge, and the cartridge sometimes they have the electron that work with only that printer, because the company they coding them that you have to buy both of them. That's
Yeah,
how
not
the printer work.
issues, yeah.
So I have to. So right now I work with like the startup in Paris that he built his own inkjet printer that can like separate everything. Because like right now I have to carry making color from biological, but I have some knowledge about this one, but for engineering I don't have that much. So that's why I pausing the printer project a bit and exploring more how I can use my ink to see how it could be from screen printing, typewriting, or this machine, or make a new machine. But it's still like a manifest that I would love to do that, but need to take more time to take on it. Yeah.
And another question, the tests that you did with these 2 colors, how is it lasting, this ink? What is happening by time, like on these prints?
Yeah, I forgot to talk about this because like my ink is focused on fading, because I think like if you want something more long lasting, you should go for chemical because they have the purpose for long lasting. But for me, I respect the nature that they don't need to be long lasting. And like I focus on more like how they can serving the temporary event, temporary situation. Because if we saw a big market now, they focus on like permanent things. So I've shift back to focus on like the short term one. But if they can more stay longer, it would be nice also. So I still like develop more on how it could be, because I would love to make the whole book from my ink, but the problem is like the fading. So I need to like work on it more. Yeah.
Some biologic fixator or something.
Yeah, it's like the moisture, the pH, especially the sun, because like nothing can prevent from the sun. Even if you bring the print or something outside the sun for the while or the UV light, they fade away, even plastic. So how can we win the sun with the living things? So yeah.
Last question. I won't.
Thank you, Punch, for your lovely presentation. But it's a wonderful situation, no? I mean, you're dealing with decay. Decay is very poetic. Decay or the fade-in. Decay, yes. Which brings us to the artistic, right? And you're hovering in between permanence, which fits with maybe with startups, and having to deal with that side. And decay and poetry is maybe our side. So can we maybe negotiate this?
Yeah, good question. Like, yeah, many people still would love me to do like a startup, but I would love to. Who don't want to be rich, right? So like, I would love to also, but like,
yeah, we're also very
but
happy.
yeah, but like,
but
but I need to take more time to get more team, because like after presentation last time that I got the pitching in the Rotterdam, it's not that went well, because when I went there, they asked me a question like, "Do you have a team? We cannot accept company is not only one people." That's what they told me. And it's like, "Do you have any team? If you don't have, what the deadline you can get the team. I mean, like, I just arrived here. I don't know no one. How can I like just put something into my team? You know what I mean? Like, it's quite a tough question because like to make a company is quite a big thing. But good news, in the lab, they accept internship for helping me doing this. So I have a team now. They will start like next week. So I would love to see like how it go. And then like when people know my project more, I can know more people that like a scientific part because I need like scientists and engineering to help me build this one, and then we can pitch for more money. I would love to do that, but I cannot do by myself. I have to like, I would love to make, because if you go startup, you have to make color for 3 years, full color forever.
Yeah, yeah.
But for artists, you can do anything that you want. So I would love to make scaling down, become a studio that have some commission.
Well, that's actually the question. I mean, so, and you're in between, and there's a lot of artists that experiment on themselves, for instance. You know, they put stuff in their body. They don't have to account for the level 1, 2, 3, 4. Everybody needs to account for. But I don't know. It's a choice. It's nice to see you. It's nice to see you in this situation, and we still have some time with you. So let's see.
Yeah, because because I didn't put in the thing, but like I work on like collaboration in the artist in here also, but like I try to see how it could be at the end. No spoil, yeah.
I
We have one last question.
No, it's maybe it's not a question. I just think you should go like to TED Talks or something like that. It was incredibly amazing, and I also like not only on this process but also like on your workshop, and I think like I don't know how to say, like the set and like the whole performativity things that you're doing right there is like amazing. And it was really beautiful also to see it from like a paint perspective kind of. So thank you so much.
Ooh, thank you for this. Thank you for these closing comments. So we're taking a few minutes to change the setting. Thanks to Imea and Joshua. Thank you so much, Punch, and to all the questions. We are ready for the second presentation of today, Sophie Boylan, the other Future Material Fellow of this year. Sophie, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Julia. Okay, I think everyone's back, so I'll get started. I'm going to be covering a lot more about the kind of sustainable aspect of my work. In the first presentation that I did, I talked a lot about my educational background and very briefly about my bioplastic sequence. So what I've passed around here is examples of bioplastics. So there's the really hard ones, which is cellulose, and the much more malleable, which is the agar. So that's what you're looking at to give you a brief idea, but we'll go into more depth on that. And then I thought I'd start with a little bit of my kind of industry background and how I was inspired to get into a more sustainable industry and profession. So in my undergrad, I kind of started my journey of internships. So I started with a very well-known brand and then this designer. And this designer was a very young and recent graduate from Central St. Martin's. And it was very much kind of thrown in the deep end of the embroidery world, very long hours. It's kind of like getting hit by a truck of what the fashion world is very quickly. And I very quickly came to the understanding that fashion is not sustainable. It's not really a sustainable lifestyle, but it's not a sustainable in terms of ethics or environmental sustainability as well, even though it's beautiful. And I went on to do quite a few internships and freelance jobs. So this one is Simone Versha, that past one was Miss Sohi. So they're all, some were recent graduates, 1-2 months of experience. This one is 15 years of experience in the industry. Great opportunities. Another one, this is more recent. You very quickly learn as well that a lot of the embroidery is done in India and then shipped to the UK, and then a lot of craftspeople in the UK actually take credit for it. So bringing the attention back to the craftspeople in India, I think, is very important. Another industry project, this is where it started to get a little bit more sustainable in the fact that this was a jacket by Gucci for Elton John. And my job was to completely deconstruct the embroidery on that jacket and then restitch it onto a different jacket. So a rare kind of chance of seeing where things are being reused. Not done very often, and it's very tedious, but why not if the embroidery is already made and he doesn't fit a jacket anymore? And then this is a restoration project. So a very old embroidery house in the UK called Hand and Lock works with the royal family a lot. And they brought me in to do a lot of conservation work, which is another much more sustainable part of the textile and fashion industry, where instead of completely recreating something, looking at what we already have, thinking what we can take from that, and then maybe what needs a little bit of refining. Another more recent project, this is a costume project. So interesting in the fact that this TV show that I've never watched is set in the 80s, and I had to recreate a wedding dress that was made to look like it was made in the 1910s, but had lived 60 years and made it to the kind of 80s era for someone to be wearing her grandmother's dress. So we had to source a lot of secondhand materials, a lot of vintage pearls. So we're moving towards the kind of sustainable future. And then that's where I get to my MA. So I did my MA at the Royal College of Art in London. And this woman on the left is my amazing tutor called Celia Pym. And I didn't realize it when I was assigned her, but her kind of whole ethos is sustainability. And I essentially just brought her very casually in one of my first meetings, a couple samples, a lot of plastic sequins, and I pretty much gave her like a heart attack. And she was really mad at me, and I didn't know why. But it's quite obvious now, looking back. When you don't really think your materials through, you think it's normal to just buy materials like everyone else. You don't really think a lot about making them, maybe a little bit. But she really pushed me to start really reconsidering and rethinking materiality and what it means to be a textile designer and an artist, and the critical importance of the role that we have within the industry in choosing our materials, and especially as artists, any artist, when you make something, that's your job as an artist, it's new typically. So what is it that it's new that you're bringing into the world here, and how can we think about where that will be in 100 years? So this is kind of where I talk a little bit more about plastic and the environment, a lot about what I'm still learning. So synthetic textiles are the single greatest contributors to the engineered microplastics in the ocean. 35% of microplastics released into the world's oceans are from synthetic clothing. So textile and fashion is not the only industry releasing these microplastics, but it's a pretty big one. And then a little bit of terminology, because I realized in my last presentation I was using words like sequin, and someone didn't know what a sequin was. So what are microplastics? Plastics averaging 0.05 to 5 millimeters. So they're super, super tiny, and we're ingesting them, and they're probably all around this room, regardless how many times you clean it. And then there's nanoplastics, which are smaller than 1 micrometer, so absolutely tiny. And then there's microfibers, which are plastic fragments shaped like tiny threads or filaments, and these come off of your clothes when you throw them in the wash, when you wear them on a daily basis from synthetic clothing. And then how big is this problem? So by 2050, our oceans are projected to contain more plastic by weight than fish, so pretty huge, with plastic production expected to increase by 500%. Marine life often mistakes plastic particles, including sequins and glitter, for food. This issue also affects humans. Over 3 billion people around the world rely on fish as their primary source of protein, and then fish that ingest these microplastics pass them on to the people who ingest the fish. 13 million tons of plastic is dumped into our oceans each year, so it's not getting any better. The amount of clothing made from synthetic fibers amounts to over 2/3, which is 69%, of all materials at present, and continue to grow at an alarming rate. It is predicted to grow by nearly 3/4 by 2030, 85% of which will be polyester. So I always say to people, when you go shopping, and when you're, whether it's secondhand, but typically new, when you just go to the high street, always look at the label. I always find that very interesting, because even today there's a lot of greenwashing where people will advertise something as extremely sustainable or it's recycled, and you actually go and you look at the label and it's like 95% polyester and maybe like 5% cotton. So always interesting. Or just shop secondhand. Another great. And then, of course, it also impacts our marine life. So these tiny plastic particles pose a serious threat to marine life, marine organisms from the smallest to the largest, also plankton, and then it just works its way up the food chain. Yeah, so recently it's been detected in the placentas of unborn animals. This isn't just seabirds, it's also land animals. So much like the case with marine wildlife, plastic pollution and discarded waste can cause intestinal blockages and damages when land animals ingest them, or fatal. And then this is really sad, but for example, in January 2018, a 20-year-old old wild elephant in India perished from plastic ingestion. It was later revealed that the significant amounts of plastic have blocked up the elephant's intestines. So you very often see the turtles and the horrible graphic imagery of the marine life with, plastic straws shoved up their nose, but it also does obviously infect land animals and us. So, sorry, this is quite depressing, but it does affect us, and it's really just getting worse as time goes on. So a study discovered the presence of microplastics in the human placenta, carrying with them substances that can disrupt the regular function of hormones and cause long-term effects on human health. And then it goes on to say, in March 2022, microplastics was detected in human blood for the first time, and weeks later found in human lungs as well. And the really scary thing is that they're thinking it's eventually going to reach the brain, which I'm sure in some people it has, but when that happens, yeah. And a lot of people, human beings, were very selfish. Unfortunately, we typically start to really care about things when it only impacts us. So maybe this will be a wake-up call, who knows. But a little bit of what I've been doing with my work is I've been making my own sequins. So my bioplastic sequins are completely plant-based. So everything that's been kind of going around the room is plant-based, made from cellulose and made from agar. And then I thought I'd add this just because it was interesting, that comment I got last time of people not knowing what a sequin was. And a lot of people refer to it as I believe, a palette. So a sequin is a small, typically shiny, generally disc-shaped ornament. And it does not have to be made of plastic. We'll go into that in a second, but traditionally they were made of solid gold, they were made of silver. They can be made from seashell, they can really be made from anything. And then a palette within the same family is pretty much the same thing, but it's more of an oval where the hole is towards the top, not in the center. Yeah. And then a little bit about sequin history, because I find it quite fascinating, but I'm a little biased. It goes back thousands and thousands of years, and it was traced to India with, I think the first ever embroidery was discovered, and it was stitched with like bone, and it was stitched in fascinating ways, and it was preserved and fossilized underground. But India is famous and world-renowned for their embroidery, and these on the left are beetle wings. I don't know if you can see that there, but beetle wings were very, very prominent, and then also small mirrors. The beetle wings also, when colonization was taking place, it became extremely popular in England, and then that became a very booming industry and export from India. And then another one that I love is King Tutankhamun. So in the 1920s, after his tomb had been looted, everything was extremely, extremely well preserved because it was underground, there was no sunlight and no water. So, for instance, this garment on the right was covered in sequins, and his were solid gold, of course. And yeah, that sparks another thing that happens later with the flappers in the 1920s, women in America, but they became obsessed with his style and the sequins, and he's a bit of a fashion icon, even though he's very young. And then another kind of random one I love is Leonardo da Vinci. So between 1480 and 1482, it was found that he actually supposedly, it may have been a woman, but invented the first ever sequin punching machine. So I don't know how true this is, but this is historically found and supposedly very accurate, but this is in Milan, and it was, yeah, fascinating part of history. And then back to the flappers. So after King Tut's tomb had been raided, and they brought all these, lavish gold and heavily embellished pieces out, this was extremely influential in the West, and specifically in the America and Europe. And then all these women were having a huge moment of liberation, and that sparked a huge interest in sequins. However, the plastic sequin hadn't yet been invented. So I believe the first actual piece of petroleum-based plastic was invented in 1907. However, it hadn't really hit the market. So these women were wearing one metal sequins made of silver and then 2 gelatin sequins, which was technically the first biosequins. So they were onto something. However, then the war happened. The Industrial Revolution had really skyrocketed, and then we really started implementing plastic into our daily lives. So unfortunately, we dropped the gelatin sequins and we moved on to plastic, which makes sense for durability, but we were onto something, but we left it in the past. And then the 1960s comes around, and the Supremes and Motown was huge, and matching outfits was huge. David Bowie in the 1970s, again, massive. Everyone was, as it says, reinventing himself, pushing the boundaries of sexuality and what it was to have disco and Studio 54. And then Michael Jackson in the 1980s, also Elton John, very worth mentioning, with his famous white glove. This was a huge moment, and that is, yes, a fully sequined jacket, and these would have all been made from plastic at this point. And then we come to the sequins that we know today. So sequins today are pretty much all and predominantly petroleum-based, and it's really sad because they're all a lot of single-use garments. So a lot of people buy them for, as it says, like New Year's Eve parties, holiday parties, winter festivities, if you're going to Ibiza, if you're going to a wedding, and then people put it in the back of their closet and they never wear it again. So this is the problem with a lot of single-use fashion, single-use plastic. It's kind of this awful marriage, and that's what I'm kind of trying to tackle with my research. So I've been making sequins, and what I passed around is cellulose and agar. So I thought I'd just mention what these actually are. So cellulose is the most abundant organic compound on Earth, acting as the primary structural component of all plant cell walls. So it predominantly comes from trees, but also cotton, hay. It's very abundant and also plant-based. And then also agar. So agar is derived from red seaweed, also what is known as algae. And then, so these are my 2 favorite kind of personal materials, but one is much more hydrophobic or water resistant than the other. So that takes me on to what I'm tackling right now. So I'm looking at qualities within nature that are naturally hydrophobic. So we look at the lotus leaf, lady's mantle, things that naturally repel water. And then with biomimetics, it's essentially looking at nature for inspiration and how man-made we kind of reinterpret this. So Gore-Tex is a really great example. Arc'teryx is a really great example. There's this weird trend where people are standing in their showers with their Arc'teryx jackets on. But yeah, this is what I'm trying to create, but plant-based, which is the problem. Or not a problem, something to overcome, but this is all synthetic, of course, and not very good for the environment. So what I've been doing at the Jan van Eyck is a lot of durability testing. So I've been testing out a lot of things I've seen online, but from nature, trying to keep everything completely plant-based again. So alum bath soaks, beeswax. This is water testing and seeing how long things last in water. So that really hard plastic that I passed around averages about 3 hours before it goes back into a liquid in water, which is not very good, whereas agar can last to months and months. And then I've also gone very into food waste. So very kindly, people have been donating a lot of food waste to me from their Wednesday dinners. The Jan van Eyck kitchen is really great. Jurika inspired this. She kind of mentioned why I don't try moving away. I was relying heavily off of organic food coloring and mica powder and flowers, which to be honest, really just go brown. There's not a lot of natural pigment there. Whereas with food waste, you get amazing, amazing colors, like red, pinks, purples, blues, yellows and oranges. That's an amazing one. And then here's some of my sequins from food waste so far. So yeah, really delving into thinking about how we can utilize waste and turn it into something and give it that second life, rather than just relying off something like food coloring. Here's a little bit of food waste development. So I didn't bring any of my finely refined embroidery, but there's an example of what it can be turned into. I also like sequins that have a little bit of texture to them and that aren't super shiny. And then I also did a little bit of cigarette but experimentation. So this is in the early stages of research. Yes, yeah, it's a very stinky process. It's not the most pleasant, but I think it's really interesting because there's a sequin factory in France, and they're famous, and I believe they're one of the last ones, and they do their sustainable sequins made out of cellulose acetate, which is what the filter from the cigarette butt is made out of. So I thought, okay, why don't I just take apart loads of cigarette butts and utilize the cellulose acetate that we already have? So it was very interesting. That one's still ongoing, that research. But yes, that's an interesting one. And then also, this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently, questioning the importance of our material choices. So I very recently started posting a little bit of my work online, and it gained a lot of attention really quickly, and like thousands and thousands, like hundreds of thousands of people loved it. But their one question was, oh, but what happens if you walk out in the rain, or what happens if I want to throw it in the wash? And, you know, I think, okay, well, my work isn't really the kind of thing you throw in the wash, or any heavily embroidered work. You shouldn't do that. You should spot clean it. But I guess I think a lot about this question, should this, for this it's this image, but should our work last forever? And this applies to any artist, not just a textile designer. And do I believe, you know, me as a designer, I have that importance over the world and the earth for my work to last that long? I don't think I do. So for me, you know, my sequin's not lasting forever. If anything adds a bit more of an importance to the work, I hope would encourage people to take more care of it. I think as a society, we've become very accustomed to wearing something once or a couple times and then giving it away or throwing it away. And I think we need to rethink our relationship with fashion and textiles, and specifically materials, as artists. And then what's next? So there's a little bit of PLA research, which I'm doing with Textile Innovation Maastricht. PLA is a very highly engineered bioplastic, which has already hit the market. The only problem with PLA is I don't think I'd be able to incorporate my organics into it. They already have a preset of pigments, and then also cellulose nanocrystals. So the current cellulose that I'm using and that I passed around, the really hard one, is not very hydrophobic, and it's completely clear naturally. So cellulose nanocrystals, or CNC, has a naturally beautiful kind of iridescent effect to it, and it's also supposed to be a little bit stronger. So that's also in the works. I'm getting that from Chill. So there's that, and then obviously still developing my colors, food waste, and durability testing. And I think that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. So fascinating. Especially, I didn't know so much about the history of sequins, so thank you so much for that, for this overview. I wonder if there are already questions. Yes.
It's interesting because it relates also to Punch and what his presentation, because I understand that maybe, you know, for some items it's very important that they're long lasting, but you pointed out yourself that there's party items that sequins, thank you very much for that sequins are used often used for items that are actually only used once and then thrown out, or, you know, are not reused. And of course, when profit is not an incentive for companies, then the only thing to overcome that is regulation. And I was wondering if there's any, because there could be so many use cases where you need to print something that lasts only for, you know, 2 weeks, 3 days, whatever. So, or that there are items that need to be only used once and then could be perfectly, you know, thrown into the biotrash and stuff like this. So, do you know of any political kind of like, can be activistic, can be organizations that are kind of like trying to regulate kind of like how, you know, if products had a fixed life cycle, then maybe they could fall under certain regulations, you know. So, and the second question is more material based. So, did you ever try to use woven processes so that you could like weave a sequin, so that you use, you know, like fibers that are natural and then weave a sequin?
Okay, I'll answer that second question first. I've never tried to weave a sequin, no, but I have woven bioplastic somewhere in the room. But that would be very interesting, a very tightly woven sequin. Very interesting. And I didn't quite grasp the first question about the political sorry,
So if usually companies need a profit incentive, and if we as a society decide that, you know, we, even though like we can regulate things, right? So that companies have to work around regulation, regardless of the profit incentive. So and of course you need to, in the fashion industry, you need to regulate the fashion industry. There's no other way to do this. Yeah, you cannot like kindly ask them. So this is also happening. So I was wondering, you know, like, is life cycle of a product something that is taken in consideration there? Or is it something that you, I mean, I know this is not necessarily something you're busy with, but I was just curious because it relates to both what Punch is working on, what you're working on. So if every product needs to have a defined life cycle and the life cycle is only 3 days, then maybe certain processes just need to be used, you know, or could be. Of course, it's not happening, but.
yeah, very interesting. So our current standard sequin that's sold at market is petroleum-based. It's based from petroleum-based microplastics, and it lasts about 1,000 years, which I think is ridiculous. So my sequins, depending on which one you would use, one is it can currently biodegrade within a day, and then the other one's a couple months. So that's a great question. It's starting to think about the longevity of the product and realistically how long we want it to last. And I think when it comes to fashion specifically, you need to think how many times you're going to wear this piece. Are you going to wear it in the rain? Are you going to, because you can't control that unless you have an umbrella, then it kind of helps. But typically with biomaterials, you can just pat the water off. It can warp the material, but typically speaking, I think people have this notion and idea about biomaterials is that they're just going to disintegrate and like fall to pieces, but they actually have quite a lot of structural, they're quite strong, a lot of them, and quite sturdy. However, yeah, it's about changing our kind of perspectives, I think, on material choices, because so much of what we wear already ends up in landfill, unless it's like an heirloom piece and you're cherishing it for many, many years. And I guess the kind of target market that I'd be looking at anyway would be quite high level market. So any heavily embroidered piece that can take hundreds of hours, I'm looking at selling it at a higher price. But I would like to shift the kind of mid-level high street market to the kind of sequins I make anyways, because they are so one kind of worn, or maybe 5 to even 10 times a year. It's very rare to see someone wear a fully sequined look. So I hope that answers it. Oh, there you go.
I have a question. Because like I know you've been working with like atelier for like a Louis Vuitton before, like got trained. What the perspective of like the art director, that do they know about your innovation about you make the bioplastic for sequence? Is there any potential that you could do that become a new collection for them? Did you think about like what if you make a new pilot? Because like some people just bought the pricey dress for show only. Because like if we talk about like a life cycle that you asked before, every product have the short one and the long one. The part of designer is how you collaborate between short and long to get like a positive feedback to the world the most. And for fashion industry, it's like a short life cycle. And I think like your sequence is quite served that well. But I would love to see like have you talked to the big industry before or not, like how they can adapt your thing in their collection?
So very interesting. It wasn't Louis Vuitton, it was Chanel. But close. So I was mentored by the head of the atelier, and they knew, and I think the reason they liked me so much was because of my approach to materials. And they seemed very, very interested in them, but I was still a student at the time, and I didn't really have it in me. I don't think I was allowed to start pitching myself. But I could definitely maybe go. I have their details. I could go back, but yeah, I mean, and even now, I still get many people wanting to buy my sequins. Like after I post some videos online, and so many people are interested, but I'm not 100% confident in the durability. And then I don't want someone to go around and start making videos about them, you know, degrading, especially the cellulose sequins in a couple hours. I'd like for them to stick around as long as possible, even if whilst remaining 100% biodegradable. So it's finding that kind of even ground. So yeah, very interesting.
Any other questions? Then I have one. You started your presentation stating fashion is not sustainable, and I wonder after this sentence if there is a full stop or a comma, but, and how your research is positioned in relation to this statement.
Okay, very interesting. I guess I shouldn't have said fashion is not sustainable. Sorry, I take that back. Maybe obviously fast fashion, and then even a lot of the luxury fashion houses I've worked with, I would not say are sustainable. It's such a hard thing to say anything is 100% sustainable because there's so many criteria to meet. But I guess in terms of, yeah, the brands I've worked for, unfortunately, I've seen the kind of greenwashing behind the scenes in-house, and, you know, they'll advertise themselves as, you know, ethical and sustainable, and that they use these abaca banana fabrics, but then you see them throwing whole garments into the bin. So I have some trust issues with fashion brands now. Though, yeah, I'd say there's so many different independent brands that are completely sustainable, I'm sure, and a lot of one-woman shows and a lot of people working really hard. And so, yeah, maybe a comma instead, or maybe nothing, maybe just a dash. Then I can't remember the second part.
No, this was it. I think like we spoke a lot about temporality also in relation to Punch presentation. There is also like a question of scale, I think, of scale. So you could like interpret this in terms of volumes. So like fast production, how much we produce, the industry versus like the small scale of production, as well as, you know, the industry and the globalized market and the sort of localized economy. And I wonder like how, again, it seems you are catering for a very specific kind of garments, like that are indeed either heirloom pieces or luxury goods, things that you aim to keep in time. But this is like a very specific niche in what we wear, in our approach, our attitude towards fashion. How do you imagine like these specific details of garments, these like sequins, you know, across different scales, across different geographies, across different class and social groups?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I guess just because of the amount of hours that goes into my work, I mean, I'd love to give it to anybody, but then I wouldn't make a living and I wouldn't sell anything. So similar to Punch's comment, you need to make a living, so it's tricky. But that's also why with like these sequins, like these could be sold to high street. Like I walk into like Zara, and the amount of clothes they have that are just like simple patterns like that, it could be made from these sequins. Whereas with something that's a little bit more highly embroidered like that on the right, it could be sold to a higher market. So, and even like without selling people full embroidered samples, I would love to just sell people my sequins. Like that would be lovely. And I get a lot of craftspeople and people wanting to send me their like wedding bouquets or their flowers from a funeral and to turn it into sequins and send it back to them. And I'm like, okay, I can, but I don't know how long these sequins are gonna stick around. So yeah, it's refining that recipe and the durability aspect of it to a point that it's longer than, I think maybe a year, taking good care of it. But ultimately I'd like for it to be able to go into the compost or into the ocean and fully biodegrade, so no chemicals. But yeah, with that.
Just a note is maybe just holding to you is it is not about what you're selling kind of and that the durability of it. It's about the experience of it. Because that's actually like high goods thing, you know, is it's not about the thing like when you actually see the cost, yeah, maybe they are expensier than other things, but they are not that much expensive, and they are like like charging for the actual experience. So I just think it's the like kind of like the way you position it and actually like make it part of it, like, you know, like this is gonna decompose and you don't have a like, but that's like the
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree. It's
Idea is super. You know, the bouquet is like a funeral, and you're making it into this is fantastic, actually. But it will take you a lot of time to develop that again.
Yes,
That's the
definitely.
point. So you only have so much time.
Exactly. And like
Yeah.
Punch's startup
Yeah.
issue, I'm kind of in the same space because I'm like, oh, to start a full production on the side, and when I'm trying to still focus on durability research can be tricky.
Yeah.
So it's finding that middle ground.
Yeah. I feel your agar weaving is gorgeous.
Thank you.
Absolutely gorgeous. So I
Thank
would
you.
love to see, I don't know, that has a pathway on itself. I feel here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been meaning, it's funny, I punch it so immediately after I turn it into a sheet that
Yeah.
I've been trying to value the sheet as its own piece of, work, and things like weaving is quite therapeutic. So
But I
just-
see the technical know-how that you've gained before is going into a new territory.
yeah, thank you.
That's
Yeah.
exciting.
So you started talking about how the industry is such a big problem regarding to waste. Would it be something you would be interested in to change it out for the thing that you are trying to develop when you find a way to make it more durable?
As in startup, like my own company to
Yeah.
change. I mean,
Yeah, to try. I mean, of course, it's going to be a very, very hard challenge to try and get rid of some of the plastics we use within fashion industry. But would that be a goal of yours to try and change it out for something more natural?
I mean, yeah, that would be amazing. That's like the end goal. Even if it's not me, even if it's someone else and I could support them in that, I'd love that. I'm slowly seeing other companies kind of starting to enter the realm of this, and designers like Stella McCartney really supporting them, which is really great to see, because a lot of it really just comes down to funding. Like Punch was saying, like a team. And to get people to invest in you, they don't see a whole lot when it's just one person. You need a team backing you, and that can take years and years and years. So yeah, for sure, that's definitely something I'd love to see. And who knows? But it's tricky because I mean we've put the damage is already done. We've got billions and billions of sequins are made every year, so the microplastics are already there. So there's already great startups and people working on recycling the plastic that's already in the environment. Now I'm trying to work on how we can stop that. But yeah.
So there's one last question.
Sophie, thank you so much for your presentation. What a beautiful research. And I think your endeavor is quite exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. So I was wondering about how sometimes the issue of sustainability, I struggle a bit when it doesn't meet when we're thinking about sometimes like the economical issues that makes even people to not afford. So I don't think that most of people that are also buying in these fast fashion chains is not only because they're unconscious, but also because they cannot afford some other's way of like having a clothes. So I was wondering, how do you feel and how would you, I don't know, suggest how can we engage, even like in a minor scale, to be more sustainable in our practice, and even how, like, yeah, how can this be impacted in our daily lives?
Yeah, so it feels like this huge, huge thing that's so almost like untouchable to tackle, right? It feels so big that it's like the damage is, you can just say, oh, the damage is done. Like there's nothing we can do about go living our daily lives. But I think through tiny, tiny actions even, like when I was Googling the origins of plastic, and then I went down this huge rabbit hole of microfibers. They were saying some things as simply as maybe doing one big wash. So saving all your washing and then just doing one big wash rather than like washing your sports bra, washing this, and then like, I don't know, I'm really lazy and I put everything in all at once. But I live with a girl who does like 10 washes a week. And I'm like, oh. So there's like tiny things like that. Shopping secondhand is probably one of my favorites and easiest things financially, like you were saying as well. It can be cheaper. I'd recommend looking for, I don't know as much in the Netherlands, but in Canada we have like thrift shops, and they're super, super affordable and really good quality, where then there's like in the UK, charity shops that are more vintage shops. So I think if you could find like a good secondhand store, the tiny things like, there's a lot of things really. I'm like, oh, but yeah, through tiny actions every day, especially like not doing as many washes, maybe when you go into say you do shop high street, because a lot of people do, looking at the label and just being a little bit more considerate of what you're buying. I would say if you can, not buying sequin garments, or if you want some sequins, go look secondhand, look on Etsy, maybe not Etsy, eBay, Depop, places like that, because then, you know, those sequins are already around. There's microplastics, they've already been invented. But maybe, yeah, not buying new sequin garments, looking at the tags of your clothes and trying to look at more natural cotton. And it is more expensive, though it will last you longer. Like I remember growing up, my mum hated like synthetic clothes, and she'd feel clothes, which has now been ingrained in me, and I always feel things when I go into a shop and she's like, oh no, that's polyester. Like, we're not buying that as polyester. And I always thought she was being really weird and dramatic, but now I'm like, actually, she was being a little smart. Like she was kind of ahead of, you know, because she realized, yes, it feels great and it's cheaper, but it won't last as long and it's not good for the environment. So I think through even tiny actions, it feels so big and daunting, but if you do little tiny things and you ingrain it into your daily life, it can make a really big difference. I hope that helped.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
It's not a question, it's just like, because when you were giving the presentation, especially with even I think we got some, what is this material, and it was really nice to see, and I was like, wow, this is so nice. But my, you're from Canada, right? Yeah. You're from Canada, and we are giving a presentation in Netherlands. So where we're talking about fast fashion. But what if there are many countries where people doesn't have choice to go to sustainable material, so then automatically they sometimes buy cheap fashion or something. So even they doesn't know English, like they can't read what is written over there, whether it is polyester or something. So then how can we as an art practitioner or cultural practitioner, I'm not saying to educate them, but how can we make a kind of a network or something so then it can reach everywhere? Like it can be, like India has like a 1.4 or 5 billion people now. And there are many people who even doesn't know what is sustainable cloth or whatever. They just go, or like, I'm just kind of trying to understand, because there are many stores here in Germany or Netherlands where it's made in Bangladesh or made in India. And when I see those cloths, I like, oh, okay. So, you know, I'm also kind of trying to understand. So I'm just asking, like, how do you see, like, you're coming from kind of a global north, like, how do you think about global south? And yeah, so I don't know, like, just a idea just came, so I'm kind of asking, like, what should we can create some more space or something, so then maybe everyone can understand and they can maybe be more concerned.
That's a really great point, and a really good question. But yeah, I'm struggling to think of one answer for that, because we as the West really, what's the word? You could say have appropriated and went against what I consider a lot of ethics and used a lot of labor in the global South, and it is extremely. I mean, you can't really talk sustainability without talking about how these workers are being treated. But it's interesting, your question about them looking at labels and it being in English. And I wonder, if that's because the clothes being made there are being imported to the West, or because I know a lot of the clothes that we donate just end up in mass landfills as well in a lot of countries. So that's a really great question. I think And to reach that kind of network, it'd be great if, I mean, there's some type of online forum or the education started quite, I think textiles should be taught in all schools. I don't think it's really taught in Canada, but I grew up in the UK and everyone has to take textiles up until you're 16. So all the boys, all the girls, everyone's learning to stitch. Everyone's learning how to use a sewing machine. I think it's a basic human skill everyone should know, unless you're a nudist. We all wear clothes. I think knowing how to repair your clothes is important. So it's hard because I don't have the authority to get into the education system in India and implement this. But maybe through workshops, I guess, and maybe, I don't know, that's a really great question. And through online education, because it's so accessible. I don't know about through to remote communities, but maybe if we start online and then thinking about how we can implement that, yeah, from a young age as well, because I think it's so, so important. But there's also people living in conditions where, you know, sustainable clothing is not their first priority, and I recognize that. So I think we, as the West, because so much of our clothes is made, you know, in Indonesia, in India, I think we are the ones that need to take accountability, and we are the ones that, need to put our foot down really with ethics and sustainability. And when you like shop from a certain brand, knowing where it's made, knowing the craftspeople, it's not saying don't shop from India, but it's saying because there's a lot of extremely talented craftspeople, and I would debate that the best embroiderers are from India. But knowing, if how a company can prove that their ethics are there and they're sustainable, and looking at that too, not just at the label and what it's made of. Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. I hope I did a little bit.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sophie. I think it's time to discover which raw materials you will use tomorrow and go to the dinner. Thank you so much.
Thank you.